All right, get ready, everyone, because today we are going deep, deep into something I bet we've all experienced, being late,
Oh, yeah.
but I think you'll find there's a lot more to it than you might initially think.
It really is interesting. We think of lateness as this simple thing,
Yeah.
but it can really tell us a lot about ourselves,
Hmm.
about our cultural norms, psychology, even how we use
You
language.
bet. And you sent over some really cool stuff to get us started on this deep dive.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought was really funny was this video that had all of these excuses for being late. Like, we've all heard them, right? Tied up with a client, stuck in traffic.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And then there was this one about a massive pileup on the highway. Like, can you even imagine?
Oh, my gosh.
So stressful. But I think you're right. These common excuses can tell us a lot about how we see time and prioritize our commitments.
Absolutely, yeah. Like when we say we're tied up, for example, it kind of implies that we're stuck, like we can't get away. It emphasizes the importance of whatever it was that kept us from being on time.
Totally. Totally. It's like saying, hey, this other thing was just that important. I couldn't get away. But what about when people try to downplay their lateness? Like when they say they'll be there in a sec, but it's going to be way longer.
Oh, yeah. That's when it gets really interesting how we use language. Because the words we choose, they really show how we're thinking about time and how we're trying to make being late seem, well, not as bad in a sec. Makes it seem a lot shorter than, say, in 5 minutes, even though both might be totally wrong.
Yeah.
It's our way of, like, minimizing the problem,
Uh-huh.
trying to still seem like we're in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost like we're trying to bend time with our words.
Yeah.
But then, I've noticed that this idea of being late, like what actually counts as being late, it really changes depending on where you are in the world.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I've definitely had some awkward moments while traveling to different countries.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like cultural norms play a huge role in how we think about being on time. What might be late in one culture could be totally fine in another.
Oh, for sure. For
It's
sure.
like, in that video we talked about with Marco from Canada
Right, right.
and Erica from Latin America,
Yes.
they had completely different ideas about this.
Marco was used to that strict Canadian punctuality.
Yeah, like down to the minute.
Well, Erica talked about this more relaxed, what was it?
Latino time.
Latino time. Yeah, where things don't always start exactly when they're supposed to.
Right, exactly. And it's not just about social stuff. It's like work, appointments, even family dinners.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, remember how they talked about that 6 p.m. dinner invitation?
Uh-huh.
It could mean totally different things
Mhm.
depending on if you're in Canada or Latin America.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that reminds me of this one time I was in Spain. It was for a friend's birthday dinner. Well, we were just talking about how different a 6 p.m. dinner can be depending on where you are in the world.
Right. It just shows how these unspoken rules about time and being on time are just part of a culture.
Totally.
It's not something you always think about,
Hmm.
but it really affects how we all interact with each other.
So true, so true. It's like everyone's got a slightly different clock in their head, and that can make things pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the video, Erica mentioned how in some Latin American cultures, it's no big deal if you're a few minutes late to a meeting.
Right.
But somewhere like, say, Germany,
Oh,
where
yes.
things are really precise,
Punctuality is key.
that kind of lateness would be like super disrespectful.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's all about understanding where you are and what's expected in that situation.
So how do you figure out these different cultural norms? Like, how do you avoid accidentally making someone mad?
Well, just being aware of the culture you're in and doing a little research beforehand can really help.
Mm-hmm.
Even something as simple as a quick Google search can make a huge difference.
That makes sense.
And if you're not sure, it's always better to be a bit early than late.
Good advice. Good advice. It's almost like learning a whole new language, but for time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Speaking of language, we were talking about how the words we use for being late can say a lot about how we see time.
Yeah.
It's not just, I'm late.
Right.
We have all these different phrases and excuses.
Absolutely. Like running behind makes it sound like you're really trying hard to catch up.
Right.
And then there's meeting ran over, which makes it seem like something outside of your control made you late.
Uh-huh. And then, of course, the classic, stuck in traffic.
Oh, yeah. That one, it never fails.
I feel like everyone's used that one at some point. I mean, traffic's unpredictable.
It is, and it's kind of like saying, it's not my fault, there's nothing I could do.
Right, right. But I'm curious, with technology and working from home becoming more common, Do you think that's changing our relationship with time and punctuality?
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, technology's given us way more flexibility with our schedules.
For sure.
We can go to meetings from anywhere, work across different time zones, even answer emails at like 2 in the morning if we want to.
Yeah, it's like we have more control over our time than ever before.
Exactly. But that flexibility can have a downside too.
Yeah.
It can be hard to separate work and personal life.
Right.
And suddenly you're expected to be available all the time and answer messages right away.
Right, and that can create a whole new kind of stress around managing your time, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of like technology gives us more freedom, but also more pressure.
It's a double-edged sword, for sure.
Exactly. It makes you think about boundaries, work-life balance, and what it means to be on time in this world where we're always connected.
Yeah, that's a lot to consider. But going back to what we were talking about before with cultural differences, do you think they're becoming less important now that technology is connecting us globally?
Hmm. It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely true that technology helps us learn about different cultures,
Oh,
but I don't think it completely erases those differences.
right, right.
Like we could be in the same online meeting from totally opposite sides of the world,
Yeah,
but we're still bringing our own backgrounds and ideas about time to that meeting.
that's a really good point.
So I think it's about recognizing those differences and using technology to understand each other better, not erase those differences.
I like that. It's like technology can actually help us appreciate different cultures even more.
Exactly. Exactly.
So with all these things in mind, cultural norms, technology, what does it even mean to be on time these days?
That's a question we all have to figure out for ourselves, and the answer might be different depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about looking at a clock.
So there's more to it than that.
It's about understanding what's expected, thinking about cultural differences, and using technology in a way that works for everyone.
You know, I think this deep dive has really shown me how much there is to something as simple as being late.
Yeah. It's like we thought we knew everything about being late,
Yeah.
but it turns out there's a whole world underneath.
It's true. And it just makes you think something like time that we think is so simple is actually really complicated.
Totally, totally. It's affected by all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with something to think about.
Okay.
We've talked about cultural perspectives and technology,
Right.
but at the end of the day, what does being on time mean to you listening right now?
That's a good question to ask yourself.
Is it about always following the clock exactly?
Yeah.
Or is it more about respecting the people you're with and the situation?
Hmm.
I don't think there's just one right answer, do you?
No, not at all. It's about finding that balance between what you believe, the culture you're in, and all the demands of modern life.
Absolutely. And maybe next time you're running behind, you'll stop and think about all these things we've talked about.
Yeah, or at least you'll have a better excuse than stuck in traffic.
Aha, right.
But seriously, we hope this deep dive has given you a new way of looking at something we all deal with,
Yeah,
and maybe even started some interesting conversations.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of being late. Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.